Good. Okay. Yes. Shall we get started then? Yes. Hello and welcome to today's Chem Safety webinar. It is to do with worker training, hazardous substance worker training, and certified handler requirements as well. Now, you may be aware that we have already undertaken the worker training webinar. I think it was undertaken May of last year. So we're just going to reiterate and recap a few things that we still may be, we might need knowledge around. And we will also go into a few more details around certified handlers. So if you are watching our webinar live, there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen where you can post any questions, which I will attempt to answer at the end of the session. Our details also will be in the following in a follow-up email, which will also include a link to the recording of today's session and some online resources as well. So this is actually one of many webinars that we've undertaken as Chem Safety. We have our own YouTube channel that you may want to refresh yourself on some of the information that we have put forward, and also our webinars can be found on our website as well. Okay, so let's get started. I think the first thing to start with there would be probably just a quick recap on the Health and Safety at Work Act, the Hazardous Substances regulations, and of course the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, and also look at some other regulations under the Health and Safety at Work Act, such as General Risk and Workplace Management Regulations. So just a quick recap. So hopefully we already are quite well versed in, especially if you've been following us throughout our webinar schedule over the last couple of years. So we have this slide here. Of course, we can see there that we have HSWA, which of course represents the Health and Safety at Work Act. Now this was implemented in 2016, I think it was. And of course, under our Health and Safety at Work Act, we have a variety of different regulations, which includes our hazardous substances regulations. Also, the General Risk and Workplace Management regulations fall under this particular act, as well as asbestos regulations and many other regulations as well. And so what you'll find is the worker training aspect of things can be found under this hazardous substance regulations. Now, these regulations, of course, cover all hazardous substances in the workplace, and it is enforced under WorkSafe. So hopefully in previous webinars, someone has described or outlined the reasons why we have this legislation. I can't really call it new anymore, as it has been around for almost since 2016. And these regulations, of course, almost to in the next couple of weeks, they've been around for 5 years as well. So when it comes to worker training, hopefully we are pretty much understanding exactly what it is that we need to know around worker training, because it has been in our regulations now for 5 years. Now, on the other side of the fence here, we have our HAZNO classification, or our HAZNO Act, sorry, which stands for Hazardous Substances and New Organisms. Now, instead of regulations, the HAZNO Act have EPA notices. So in these EPA notices, they'll have EPA labelling notices, safety data sheet notices, classification notices, hazard property control notices, as well as minimum degree of hazard notice. So this is actually where we draw the definition of a hazardous substance from. So it's still from this particular part of legislation. Now, with our HAZNO Act and these EPA notices, they cover approvals for hazardous substances. So if companies are interested in importing, or if we have companies from overseas that would like to export some of their hazardous substances to New Zealand, whether it be for agri-chemicals, for fumigants or anything like that, it does need to go through quite a stringent system for it to be allowed on our shores, where they take into consideration things like its bioaccumulativeness, the ecotoxicity associated with it, as well as wahi tapu and taonga species. And next there, yes indeed, this part of the legislation, the HAZNO Act, is enforced by the EPA, which is known as the Environmental Protection Authority. So hopefully, quick recap on that, we're pretty much okay with that. So if we keep moving, looking now at our worker training. So this is under the Health and Safety at Work Hazardous Substances Regulation, Regulation 4.5. So as you can see there, this is what the regulation looks like. And hopefully this is something that we are quite well versed with. And you can see there the very first point there where it says, in addition to complying with Regulation 9 of the Health and Safety General Risk and Workplace Management Regulations, the PCBU must ensure that every worker who uses, handles, manufactures, or stores a hazardous substance, including hazardous waste, is before the worker is allowed to carry out or supervise work involving in hazardous substances, provided with the following information, basically. And I'll just wait. I've got another slide where it sort of simplifies all of this. However, hopefully we have seen this in our previous webinar that was undertaken May last year. And of course, you can see that in our YouTube channel as well as on our website. So just looking at, so we'll just reiterate that Regulation 9 that it's mentioning here of the General Risk and Workplace Management Regulations. So, it's the duty to provide information, supervision, and training and instruction. So a PCBU must ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, that every worker who carries out any kind of work, uses any kind and uses plant of any kind, or deals with substances of any kind that is capable of causing a risk to the workplace, needs to have the following things put in place. So this is under that General Risk and Workplace Management Regulation as well. Okay, so again, this should just be a recap. This should just be revision for most of us. And just to reiterate that recap, with regards to worker training, these are what the people need to know. They need to know the chemical, physical, and health hazards of their hazardous substances. And this is straightforward, just to have a good understanding of the hazard classification system, which again, you can see on a previous webinar. Also, maybe having an understanding of the GHS system, GHS classifications as well, which you'll be able to see on a previous webinar, as well as using safety data sheets. And again, this is on a previous webinar that we have provided in the past. All workers also need to have some sort of understanding of the controls around their hazardous substance. So this may include the threshold amounts, signage, labelling, knowing what kind of information we should be looking out for on our signs, labelling, packaging, certified handlers, incompatible substances, storage requirements. So hopefully this is still just a recap. We also need to be wary, or all workers, that is, need to know the location of reference information. So that includes knowing where our SOPs stored, where our safety data sheets are located, and emergency response plans and all those things. All workers need to be aware or understand the operations that are being undertaken in particular areas, and also be familiar with the plant that is required to undertake those operations as well, so the operations and operating equipment. And all workers need to be familiar with, or need to know, the PPE that they need to use while they're undertaking these particular tasks. Also have a good understanding of emergency response procedures, so understanding what to do in case of a spill, what to do in case of a fire, or any type of first aid event involving your hazardous substance, so whether it be exposure, ingestion, inhalation, all that stuff. And then finally, all workers need to at least know their worker obligations. Okay, so and that work obligation thing is not just for hazardous substances. Work obligations is covered in the Health and Safety at Work Act itself. So not just hazardous substances, but any aspect of any workplace. Workers need to ensure they understand what their worker obligations are. Okay. Just off the top of my head, just making sure that you're taking care of your own health and safety on site, making sure that nothing that you're doing on site is going to be unsafe for other workers. And if you see anything unsafe on site, you should do something about it. Comply with reasonable instructions given by the employer, and also comply with reasonable health and safety procedures for your particular work site. So again, this should just be a recap. Now, I have mentioned that the term PCBU, again, as a refresher, PCBU, so technically it means person conducting a business or undertaking. However, in our workplace, it's generally the company itself. So you will find all around the place the PCBU's duty to do this, the duty of care of the PCBU, and PCBU needs to ensure the workers are trained and all this kind of stuff. What you'll find is that the workplace would have delegated people to be in charge of ensuring that people are trained, that there's safety data sheets on site, and a person's in charge of making sure the labelling is all compliant and all that kind of stuff as well. So just looking at that, again, just another quick refresher about about PCBU. And again, you'll see this on a previous website that we've already undertaken. Say primary duty of care. Okay, so as it states there, PCBU must ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, health and safety of workers who work for the PCBU while the workers are at work in the business or undertaking, and workers whose activities in carrying out the work are influenced or directed by the PCBU while the workers are carrying out work. And I mean, there's a whole lot of other things there too, but hopefully, again, this is just revision. So it's just sort of getting us in the mood, getting our heads switched on to, you know, where we're at with our worker training regulation, you know, who's in charge, whose duty of care, and also including the workers and their obligations as well. So as I've kept mentioning, you know, all of this worker training is comprehensively covered in our previous worker training webinar, which was undertaken in May of 2021. And this can be found, as you can see there. We have the main 40-minute webinar that you can have a wee look at and refresh yourself on. And also, and this was undertaken by my colleague, Janet Kanicki as well, and she also has the shorts version. So there's a brief 5-minute catch up that you could also look into as well. Now, when it comes to worker training, Chem Safety do offer this, or do provide this service. We call it our chemical awareness training courses, which I am one of the primary trainer, I guess, when it comes to this chemical awareness training. And of course, what we do is we undertake all of those aspects of Regulation 4.5, or everything right up until the use of plant, of course, because you know you can't really learn how to use a machine while we're undertaking a course. Hopefully that should already be undertaken by the workplace itself. So yeah, so just feel free to check that out on our website if you do require any chemical awareness training for your workers. What about certified handlers though? What's going on here with certified handlers? Okay, so let's just check this out. What are certified handlers all about? Why do we need certified handlers? And as it states there, it is to ensure that significantly toxic materials are under the control of knowledgeable and competent people. So to become a certified handler, you will need knowledge, practical skills, experience, all that kind of stuff as well. Now, when it comes down to it, and I've got some slides coming up that will let us know, when you actually need a certified handler certificate, what type of things, what type of substances will require this type of compliance action. So we do have that coming up in a few slides. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll just quickly jump to that. Now, the things that may require certified handlers. So we have that here. So literally all HAZNO classes 6.1A and 6.1B substances, or GHS, acute oral dermal inhalation toxicity category 1 and 2, substances will require certified handlers. There are also numerous Class 1 substances that are specified in Part 9 of the regulations. There are fumigants as well that are 6.1A or 6.1Bs, and some that may be specified in a specific safe work instrument, which are these VTAs here as well, the Class 1s that require controlled substance licenses, and agrochemicals as well that fall into this category of a 6.1A and 6.1B. So with that safe work instrument that I mentioned just then, what you'll find is there are some substances that do fall into that category of a 6.1A or 6.1B substance. However, they do not require certified handlers. So you'll find that it is here the hydrochloric acid that falls into this particular approval, the hydrobromic acid as well, and hydroiodic acid there as well that falls under those approvals. So even though these substances are 6.1B, they fall under a safe work instrument, so do not require certified handlers so long as they are locked up and secured when they're not in use. However, we do have some substances that aren't 6.1A or 6.1B substances that fall under these particular headings and these particular approval numbers as well. 5,5 Melody Duo NF as well will require certified handlers for those particular approvals. So I thought I'd jump ahead a couple of slides just to sort of reiterate and just to let you know what things will require certified handlers. So So what do the certified handlers need to know? What do they need to know? So this all falls under regulation 4.5. So as you can see here, all certified handlers need to be aware of the hazard classifications for their substances they're to be certified handlers of. They need to be familiar with the properties and the adverse effects that can be caused by them. They need to be familiar with the requirements that are imposed by the Health and Safety at Work Hazardous Substances regulations, and also the HAZNO Act as well, the EPA notices. They need to be familiar with them as well. They need to have an understanding of the conditions that will be on their certificate, whether it's just for storage and use, or just for storage, or just or other types of life cycles. They need to ensure they have an understanding of the precautions they need to put in place to prevent any kind of injury or illness, and also the procedures to adopt in an emergency. And in some cases, they may need to understand some of the variations regarding the safe work instrument. So at this stage, I think things like ethane dinitrile, if you were to be a certified handler for that, you'd need to know at least that there are prescribed exposure standards for that particular substance. The next one there is to demonstrate the working knowledge of procedures and plant. Okay, so in other words, you'll need to demonstrate it. The compliance certifier will be on site, or the person assessing you will be on site, and you'll need to demonstrate to them that you are competent and you know where all the safety procedures are, where all the spill kits are, where the fire extinguishers are, all that kind of stuff when you are on site. Also be able to demonstrate any of the machinery that you need to use and any of the equipment that you need to use as well. If you have to use any type of PPE, including respirators, you'll need to give a demonstration on your knowledge of those respirators as well, including understanding the checks for the valves on the inside, the checks for the correct cartridges, the checks for the seals, and ensuring that all people that use respirators understand the importance of a positive and negative pressure check before you don that respirator itself. Okay, so all of this, so this is all nice. This is a nice, pretty version of what the requirements are. This is the not so pretty version, but of course it is found there, regulation 4.3. So all of those things that we've mentioned there is 4.31, A, B, C, all of them, and then 2 is to do with the demonstration of understanding the procedures and plant. Also, 4.32B, see here, also states that if you want to be a certified handler, you need to have undertaken the regulation 4.5 training as well. So worker training needs to be part of your scope or of your qualifications before you can be signed off as a certified handler. Okay. So moving along, the different types of acutely toxic substances that require certified handlers. So this again is something that I've mentioned just previously. So certain class 1 explosives, some agri-chemicals, of course, if they're 6.1 A or B, will fall into a safe work instrument. Certain vertebrate toxic agents as well. So ones that are 6.1 A or B or that require controlled substance licenses. Certain fumigants, and also certain industrial chemicals, again, all to do with this 6.1A, 6.1B thing here. Okay, excellent. So we've gone through that. So let's just look at some of the ins and outs around certified handler compliance. So here we have a compliance certificate for certified handlers will be limited in a number of ways, okay? So it could be limited to the particular phase of life cycle, as I mentioned before, either storage or use, or just storage or disposal, or in some cases even transportation. With regards to transportation life cycles, not often we come across them, but they're mainly for the large bulk tank wagons and ISO containers of things like CCA, timber treatment products, or formaldehyde as well, bulk tank wagons of formaldehyde we've come across in the past. It can be limited to hazardous substance or classes. There could be a limit on how you can actually use it, and also it will be limited on a specific workplace. Okay, so that means that if you get your ticket, you know, as people call it, or your compliance, if you become a certified handler and think, sweet, I'm a certified handler, and then decide to jump ship and then go work for the opposition, it doesn't quite work that way. Your certified handler certification is relevant and only relevant to the specific workplace that you are involved with when you are assessed. Substances, classes, etc. Will be specified on that certificate. And the compliance certificate must have the name of the certified handler as well as his or her residential information and contact with and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when it comes to all of this stuff, some of the more private information there, we can still issue copies for display. That doesn't have to have that. However, the workplace will have the formal certification there with all of your details on that as well, because it is a formal legally binding document that this certified handler compliance is. A certified handler compliance certificate remains valid for a period of 5 years from the date of issue. Okay, so since these regulations have changed pretty much 2017, December the 3rd, I think it was, in 2017, from that point onwards is when certified handler certificates would have been issued. However, I might be wrong here, but I don't think any were actually issued in 2017. It might have been 1 or 2 in the whole country, but I don't think so. 2018, however, is going to be was the year where certified handler certification came into effect, into full effect. That was, and literally that means, so 5 years from then, which will be 2023, which is next year, is when we're going to see our first lot of renewals. So, if your certificate's about to expire, then you will find you'll have to undertake the renewal process. And the renewal process, it's still yet to be determined what that will involve. It may not be as involved as the initial process that was undertaken, but still that's yet to be determined due to the fact that we haven't done any renewals yet. So we'll await guidance from the powers that be. The next thing there, we have with our 6.1 A and B substances. This is a very important one. Now, and this is the whole point of certified handlers. So as it states here, these substances must be under the personal control of the certified handler. And if they're not under the personal control of the certified handler, they need to be locked away. They need to be put away. Okay. Now, the next little part here states that persons who are not certified handlers can still handle these hazardous substances. However, the certified handler needs to be present at the place where the substance is being handled and needs to provide guidance to the person about the handling and is available at all times to provide assistance as necessary while the substance is being handled. So what this means is that if you're using these hazardous substances, these acutely toxic substances, the certified handler has to pretty much be right there with you while you're using them if you're not a certified handler yourself. So this means that the certified handler can't be up in an office away from where the work is being undertaken, because that will fail to fulfill this statement here. Available at all times to provide assistance as necessary. They won't be close enough if something goes wrong. So literally, certified handler needs to be right there on the floor with the person and be able to, or in the laboratory, to be able to provide assistance more close at hand there. Okay, so that's an important one about certified handlers, and also the importance of not just having one certified handler on site. Because if that certified handler comes down with COVID or gets sick or goes on annual leave, then unfortunately you can't use your class 6.1A or 6.1B substance until they get back. So that's again the importance of the importance of having more than just one certified handler on site, and maybe even more than two, because the likelihood of both of them getting sick, especially in the day and age that we're in at the moment, is likely. So that's something to think about as a PCBU if you do have substances that require certified handlers. So another thing here, a controlled substance, so this is about controlled substance licenses, is required for possession of class 6.1A or 6.1B vertebrate toxic agents. Also substances, typically VTAs, that are specified in the regulations. So this includes things like 1080, and also substances specified in relevant safe work instruments as well, okay? So persons who do not hold a controlled substance license are permitted to possess the substance provided that they are under the immediate supervision of a CSL holder. Okay, so very similar things. So what you'll find here is that, as it states, the very last line here, you must have a current certified handler certificate in order to get your CSL, to get your controlled substance license. Okay, so to get the controlled substance license, you firstly need to be a certified handler. All right, so that's a big one. So those of you that are thinking of being involved with these VTAs, just be aware you'll need to be a certified handler first. So how do I get my certified handler's certificate? How do I acquire my certified handler compliance certificate? Now, these are pretty much, this is the standard process. So you need to attend and pass a relevant certified handler knowledge course. Now, in the past, we have had lots of inquiries around the NZQA unit standards and things. Don't get me wrong, they're a good thing. They provide a good framework or basis for your certified handler knowledge course. I think the unit standard is 31291. I think that's what the unit standard is. But don't be surprised if you do undertake these courses and then need to get certified, and you'll find that the people that undertake these courses aren't always able to provide the actual certification. You'll need to find one of us, a compliance certifier, to certify you. And the thing is, with us as compliance certifiers, we need evidence of what was actually covered in those courses. So just turning up with a certificate saying you've got your NZQA unit standard 31291 isn't enough. We'll want to see evidence of the test, evidence of the course, and evidence that the relevant parts of the regulations were covered in that particular course. So that's a very important thing to know, very important thing to know. So once you've passed the relevant certified handler knowledge course, there needs to be some form of on-site practical assessment as well. And this is for you to be able to demonstrate the working knowledge of those substances. And that's as per regulation 4.32A, as we mentioned previously. And we also require worker training documents. So we do need some supporting evidence that details any of the on-site training that you have undertaken by your employer. And also we do require some form of supporting employer letter as well, just as additional backup and as additional evidence that you are indeed the right person for the job and that you are competent with those hazardous substances that you're working with. Okay, so that's a very important thing there. Now, these knowledge courses and these practical assessments and things, the knowledge courses, they don't have to be they can be attended via any kind of Teams online course. Actually, if I go to the next slide there. So again, Chem Safety, we provide the service of the of not only the courses themselves, but we also do the practical assessments. And then we're able to, and then there's also compliance certifiers who are separate from the training that we've undertaken, who are able to certify those people that have undertaken the training and undertaken that practical assessment. And that's a good thing for us at ChemSafe, because it just means that we're able to maintain that difference, maintain that separation, so there is no conflict of interest between the person who is doing all the training and then the person who finally certifies. So in other words, with me being the main trainer here for certified handlers as well, I don't actually get to do much certification unless some of my colleagues have actually done the training or filled in for me a day that I might be sick for the training. Then I'm able to certify those people, but that has been very few and far between, to be completely honest. It makes it quite interesting when it comes time for me to be audited. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, yes, indeed, Chem Safety, we offer the service of the Certified Handler Knowledge Training. These are the dates of the upcoming courses that we'll be holding in Christchurch, and also some of the upcoming courses that we will be holding in Wellington as well. And again, get on our website, check it out if you need certified handlers, and we'll be able to provide the service. Excellent work there. So how do I find a compliance certificate? How do I find one? Now, this has been interesting as well. We often get emails from people saying, hey, we'll look you up on the website, can you help us out with some certification? And we're saying, yes, that's fine. We'll get into the conversations. We'll talk about the things that we can and cannot do. That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, now we can do this, we can do that. And then right at the end, we kind of discuss, okay, where's the location? And then they'll say things like, oh, we're based in Whangarei. And then we have to reply, oh, sorry, we're actually based in Christchurch or Wellington. And then they'll say, oh, but the website says, you're able to provide the service here, which we are. We can provide the service all around the country, but that would also mean that there will be additional costs for travel. Now, a way to figure this out before you get in touch with us is to sort of navigate your way around this Register of Compliance Certifiers website from WorkSafe there. Matter of pressing apply filter and apply filter. If you need certified handlers, you'll put that in there. Now, there's some interesting thing going on at the moment, so don't be surprised if you might have to push apply filter twice at the stage. But once you get through, it's all good. And then what will happen is it'll apply a filter, and then you'll come up and you'll see my name, Dwayne Bennett. And then you'll go, okay, that's great, certified handler. And you might actually notice here that authorization continues in force whilst the renewal application is in process. So those of you with the eagle eyes out there might notice that my authorization expiry date was the 17th of October. However, I have received some proposed emails from WorkSafe just yesterday, actually, about my renewal. So I'm quite happy about that. But anyway, what you need to do for any of the compliance certifiers that you're looking up for your certified handlers is you need to see the details. And here you will see the home region being Canterbury. Okay, the home region there being Canterbury. So that's how you know where they are actually based. Now, the rest of it here, yes, indeed, we can travel around the place. It's not a problem, but there will be, of course, costs of travel. Now, on top of that, when you see those details, you'll also see what my scope of certification is. So just let it be known, this is the old scope. So my new scope will also include fumigants, at the EDN fumigant, that's the ethane dinitrile. But this is how you know what the scope is. So as you can see here, unfortunately, I'm not really, my scope doesn't include agrochemicals. So yeah, you might not be able to get agrochemical, or for the use of agrochemical certification out of me, unfortunately. And another unfortunate thing about agrochemicals and certain fumigants and VTAs as well, when it comes to those of us that are based in the South Island, there are very, very few compliance certifiers that will be able to certify you down here, at the very least. And all up, there's actually few certifiers that will be able to certify you even around the country. Okay, so that's just my scope of certification. Some of my other colleagues here, Elizabeth Harwood, her scope includes agrochemicals, however, not the use of it, but all other life cycles, class 6s as well. So that's just your industrial chemicals. Some of the fumigants are covered here too, and it lists the types of fumigants that it's that Elizabeth's scope covers, and also the vertebrate toxic agents, and it lists those that her scope does cover as well. And you'll notice here with the VTAs, again, it's not covering use. However, fumigants, it does cover use. So just keep an eye on that as well. And if we look at my other colleague, Janet, again, you can see here agrochemicals, but not for the use. Class 6s, pretty much everything, every life cycle fumigants, the use of them as well. Oh, okay, that's handy to know. And the VTAs as well, all life cycles except for use. So just bear that in mind when you do contact us, especially those of you that are needing certified handlers for vertebrate toxic agents or for agrochemicals as well. Right, so what about laboratories? We've got a question there. Okay, so we will answer those questions at the end of the session, hopefully, or hopefully try and answer them best I can. So what about laboratories? Okay, so this has been a hotly contested discussion or argument about the requirements of certified handlers with regards to laboratories. Now, before the legislation changed, we had this thing known as a code of practice, exempt laboratories, this, that, the next thing. When the regulations changed, however, there was input from the regulations. So with our new hazardous substances regulations, they actually do have a separate part for laboratories themselves. So as it states here, there are a specific set of regulations for laboratories that use hazardous substances, including, if needed, unapproved substances in research, development, analytical testing, and teaching. Laboratories must still comply with parts 9 to 13, except they do not need certified handlers for location compliance or controlled substance licenses. Laboratory personnel, including lab managers, must meet a specified skill and knowledge requirements. The definition of a laboratory does not include a separate chemical store. Okay, so I have had some discussions with other colleagues about this, and this is also a hotly contested sort of interpretation of the regulations. People thinking, well, maybe if you have a lab manager in charge of a chemical store, that might be all right. But you think about it, the laboratories part 18 actually has specified requirements for that laboratory. It needs to be a laboratory, right? So there it is. These stores will require certified handlers, location compliance certificate if the classes and quantities exceed those thresholds. Okay, so in other words, yes, indeed, yes, indeed. If you have a store, a chemical store that is separate to a laboratory, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be an external DG store. It could be a store that is not part of that laboratory, will also require certified handlers and location compliance certification. Okay, and so when you think about the parts, so you think, okay, laboratory, what does that even mean? I mean, what do they mean by that? So as mentioned before, hazardous substances for research, development, analytical testing or teaching. None of those hazardous substances or any substance created for the use is to be sold by that laboratory as a substance. Okay, so if you're in the business of selling your substances, then yeah, it sort of doesn't, you don't fit into this category. Okay, so we have those regulations in there. Parts of the laboratory to be impervious to hazardous substances as well. Okay, so we need to look at some of these details from these regulations, and also that design of the laboratory. If a hazardous substance, whether approved or not, is used or is available for use in a laboratory, the PCBU must, with management or control of the laboratory, must ensure the laboratory is designed and operated so as to prevent the substance from escaping the laboratory. So you've got all of these other regulations to look into. Okay, so what I've noticed is most people who are involved in laboratories, who do have class 6 and 8 or 6.1A and 6.1B substances on site, they have pretty much looked through this with a fine-tooth comb. They've looked through all of this and they're kind of trying to think, okay, so how, I mean, just, you know, they're trying to see if they fit into this first definition, or if there's anything that they can think about here where, you know, there might be requirements where they still are covered under the laboratories there. But anyway, just looking at that there, laboratory manager as well, there needs to be at least one designated laboratory manager for your lab. Most laboratories that I've come across, they do have laboratory managers, especially those of you that are involved in research and development, analytical testing, even teaching as well, universities, secondary schools, things like that. The skills and knowledge requirements for laboratory managers, it's all listed here in part 18 of the regs. Need to have the knowledge requirements for personal handling of hazardous substances as well. So we'll come back to this, and that ties in with regulation 1810 as well. We'll come back to those ones shortly. Record hazardous substances in the laboratory, okay, so having some sort of record and also tracking some of those ones that do require tracking. And each of those laboratories do require an emergency response plan, which is found in this particular subpart of part 5. So there are specific emergency response plans that are required for your laboratories. Now, yes, what about that code of practice? You know, CRI, university exempt laboratories, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is still to be used as a guideline. However, as mentioned before, if the store is external to the laboratory, not part of a laboratory, and it's storing those particular 6.1As and Bs, then yes, you'll require certified handlers. There is a new safe work instrument, or a new safe work instrument is reportedly in development, and I eagerly await this because just like those of you that are asking these questions, we also have questions, and it'll just make everyone's job a lot easier once this is released. But it'll be quite interesting to see a safe work instrument for laboratories. I mean, usually when they release safe work instruments, it's just for a very, very specified topic or specified chemical. So the safe work instrument is going to be, rather lengthy, I dare say. I think there's also a guideline that will be released around that will sort of just tie us over until this reported safe work instrument comes into effect. So that's, you know, laboratories and things like that. And then of course we've had from secondary schools, because, you know, those laboratories, they're still using 6.1As and 6.1Bs for educating students around some of the neat experiments that we've all undertaken, those of us that were chemists. So you've got there, yes indeed, it's the Safety and Science Putail document there that has been released as a guideline around it. And even within that, so those of you that are tuned in, that are part of these laboratories of the secondary schools, you can see here that while persons handling hazardous substances in the laboratory, including students, do not need to be certified handlers, they must be provided with training and knowledge appropriate to the activities that they will be undertaking and to the laboratory itself. Okay, so you're not necessarily, you don't need certified handlers at secondary school. So those technicians, the teachers, are not required to be a certified handler. However, you still need to meet these rules. You still need to be covered off by those parts of the regulations, the parts of the laboratories regulations as well. So anyway, I mean, these were all excerpts out of this particular document. And the induction, I mean, it talks about laboratory inductions as well, should have the minimum of all of this type of information there. And that's to be used in conjunction with the laboratories there, the part 1814. Okay, so hopefully that's clarified things, or maybe it's muddied things up a wee bit, I'm not too sure. But yeah, certified handlers is definitely a hotly contested topic at the moment, especially in laboratories, especially for lab workers. So if you do have any questions, we'll come up to the questions slide very soon. But feel free to check us out on our website there. Click subscribe there. I'm not going to do the cheesy 3, 2, 1 subscribe thing, but yeah, do subscribe and check out all of our webinars that we have. If you do not have access to YouTube, then feel free to download any of these webinars off, or just watch them off our website at the very least. So just wondering, any questions there? So I can see a couple. Let's just check that out. Okay, so from Daria. Okay, Daria, hi there. With regards to classification, I've found that sometimes the list of applicable classes on the manufacturer's safety data sheets is different from what is listed in the EPA approved substance database for the same substance. Any comments on this? And specifically, when we are looking at requirements for training, the site certifications, for site certifications, do we go off the EPA database or the manufacturer's safety data sheet? Here's the thing. If we think about it logically, especially if we think about it, if we're relevant to New Zealand, and this happens often. I can't remember if I mentioned or not when I did the webinar for safety data sheets, but not all safety data sheets are created equal. A lot of these safety data sheets are actually incorrect. Even just yesterday, I noticed there was a safety data sheet for sodium hydroxide that said it was an 8.2A, or category skin corrosion category 1A, which is completely incorrect. So what the best, and good on you as well, Daria, for checking it out in the EPA database, because when it comes down to any kind of compliance, any kind of enforcement agency will be using that EPA database as a background. So it would be important for you to use the EPA database as a guideline if your safety data sheets are inconsistent. So yeah, always cross-reference with the EPA database. And the EPA database, that's pretty much what we base all of the compliance on. So, and we've come across this a few times. We've even come across it for certified handlers. Now, what you'll find is there are some safety data sheets, if they're provided, if the suppliers from the US, they say that formaldehyde, say, for instance, is only a category 3. It's only a 6.1C, whereas our EPA database do specifically state it as actually a category 2 acutely toxic substance. And that's where it gets even more tricky, because this is for a compliance action. This is for certified handlers. And what we've had to tell our clients is that if you were to be audited by an enforcement agency, they will refer to the EPA database, not your safety data sheet. They'll go to the EPA database and it will say acute toxicity category 2, and then they'll say, yes, you do need certified handlers and improvement notice, whatever. So yes, go by the EPA database, because there are a lot of inconsistent safety data sheets out there. And surprisingly, some of these safety data sheets are from sources you thought you'd be able to trust, some trusted sources. So I won't go into details there. And we have another question there around the example you provided with some substances being exempt from the requirement to have certified handlers. Is this exemption for storage, use, or manufacturing? It's exemption for all. Okay, and it's just from that safe work instrument. So it's the hydrochloric acid, it's the hydrobromic acid, and hydroiodic. So it's from that safe work instrument there that I mentioned. So those are the 6.1 A's and B's that do not require certified handlers. Okay, and as I mentioned, if you looked into the safe work instrument, it will describe the fact that so long as these substances, when they're not in use, are locked away, they don't need to be certified. Okay, I think I've got some more here. No worries, Daria. Hamish, excellent. Why hazardous substances doesn't appear to be in the EPA database? Do I need it? It's a 6.1B. Okay, so Hamish, Now, with your question, you might need to pop, is it also lower quantities, what need controls according to legislation? Okay, so that's another good question about certified handlers, actually. Certified handlers is binary. Even if you have 5 or 10 mils of certain substances, that will need certified handlers. However, when it comes to things like mag toxin, I think you're able to purchase that stuff up to 3 kilos of it without a certified handler certificate. However, over that amount, then you will need it. Now, in general, certified handlers is yes or no if it's required. Now, your substance doesn't appear to be in the EPA database. So, Hamish, we might need to just brush up on our safety data sheet skills reading there, because what you'll find is the name of your substance, the product name probably won't be in that database. No, it won't. But if you go to section 3 of your safety data sheet, it will have the chemicals that are present in that particular substance. And then from those chemicals, also in section 3, there will be CAS numbers. So grab your substance, grab your safety data sheet for your substance right now, have a look at section 3, and in that section will tell you what the chemicals actually are. Because of course, you've got things called like Bondrite MCR and Bondrite ALX and Loctite this. Of course, it's not going to be in the database because it's a product name. So you have to look at section 3 of your safety data sheet, and then from that section, plug in those chemicals into that EPA database, and you'll figure out what it is that requires the certified handlers. But either way, do get in contact with us, Hamish. Send us a wee email if you need further help around that. But hopefully, if you just look it up in the safety data sheet there, you should be able to find the name of the actual chemical that's triggering the 6.1B requirement. So it's lower contents controls, 50 litres. Yeah, so again, with the certified handlers, that's not the case. It just depends on the substance, though. So if you can tell me what the substance is, then we'll be able to let you know that the less than 50 litre thing, like I mentioned with that substance mag toxin, if you have more than 3 kilos, you'll need certified handlers. Less than 3 kilos does not. Okay, when you discuss, okay, so next question here, Arwen. When you discuss the separate chem stores under, you said that external separate chem stores require certified handlers and location compliance certificates if the classes and quantities exceed thresholds. If they don't exceed thresholds, do they still need handlers? Yes, they will. They'll still need handlers. So that ties back in with the other one. If they don't exceed the thresholds for locations, then they won't. So again, it might be a matter of just checking out some of our other webinars that we've done for location compliance that has this information. Either way, with the follow-up email, we'll send some documentation that will give the threshold charts through to you. So if you're over certain threshold amounts, you will require location compliance. So that statement about threshold, quantities exceed thresholds, is based on location compliance certification. If you have any amount of the 6.1 A's and B's stored in those particular stores, you'll need certified handlers. Just get in contact with us so we know exactly which one it is. Like I keep mentioning, the mag toxin does have an allowance for 3 kilos. And if you have more than 3 kilos, you'll need certified handlers for that one. Okay, so another few questions here. Excellent. Anonymous attendee, that's fine. Do labs need to meet the regulation, okay, yeah, requirements for tracking, inventory, and class 6.1 A and B? So yes, indeed they do. So if we just come back to one of these slides here where it says, so just bear with us here, one of those slides for laboratories. Who was it? Entry laboratory, sorry. I think it was to do with, what was it? Recording. There you go. So the answer to that question: do the requirements for tracking and inventory for the class? Do labs need to meet the regs requirements for tracking and inventory? And yes, you do, because if you're running under a laboratory, there it is there. Yes, you do need to ensure that you've got an inventory on site, because it's part of being a laboratory, or proof that some of the outside laboratory will be subject to the tracking. So part 19, yes, indeed you do. Do you recommend lab managers to be trained as certified handlers for labs for 6.1 A and B substances? Here's the thing. From a regulatory perspective, if these class 6.1 A's and 6.1 B's are stored in the laboratory itself, as it states here on the slide, it's not a requirement. And this will come down to your own workplace's policies and procedures. It can be perceived as having an extra layer of protection or an extra layer of compliance protection if there are people that are certified handlers on site, even if you don't need them. But as it states here in the regulations, it's not required. Under the regs, it's not required if you have your class 6.1 A's and B's stored in your lab and your lab is actually running as per part 18 of the regulations. Okay, and do I recommend? Well, I would say yes, because that's what I am. I'm a compliance certifier for certified handlers. The more the merrier, but as a regulatory requirement, it is not required. It's not required. But it may help your case if there is any kind of audit, or if there is any kind of if anything is undertaken, or if you are audited by any enforcement agency, it will definitely work in your favour. And it's, like I said, just an extra layer of compliance, and there's an extra layer of knowledge as well. I mean, the knowledge that comes from the certified handler training and certification is so useful. Okay, it's so useful and just keeps everyone safe. So from a regulatory point of view, so long as you're falling under the laboratories and these substances stored within that laboratory, then it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. Shooting myself in the foot. Okay, case number Nico GT benzoate. But I'll send an email. Yes, please. Yes, send the email. Oh, nicotine benzoate. Okay, yes, indeed. So yeah, it'd just be a matter of looking that up. Awesome, awesome work. Yeah, send us an email, Hamish. It'll be good, and we'll get to the bottom of what's actually going on there and see what those requirements are. So at this stage of open them all, one answer. Awesome, thank you. Excellent, no worries. So yeah, that's pretty much the questions. Okay, does Chem Safety have compliance certifiers who provide training for class 1s? No, sorry. No, we don't. But again, just from this webinar, looking at the webinar, you've seen how to use the WorkSafe. So these are the compliance. So these are the things that we cover off. So it's mainly our class 6s. Actually, they're all just the class 6.1 A's and B's. And we don't cover class 1s. However, if you do want to find a compliance certifier that could be able to help you the class 1s, this is where you're going to be able to use this webinar. Use this particular, get on this website and plug in your information there, what you want, you know, certification type and all that, press apply field. You might have to press it twice, and then it'll bring up a whole list of people that do class 1s. Click on their details to make sure, and then they'll have this in their certified handle will be for class 1s. So yes, indeed. Short answer to that, no, we don't undertake training or certification for class 1s. Sorry. So sorry about that. It's quite interesting though. Have attended a few of the class 1 workshops, and geez, yeah, just some interesting stuff that goes on in those workshops. So yeah, but no, we don't. Sorry. So just before, okay, we've got another question here. Is there a compliance requirement checklist readily available with respect to hazardous substances in the Chem Safety website? So is there a compliance requirement checklist readily available? Yes. So that would be our thresholds table that we have. So remember, when it comes to any kind of controls for our hazardous substances, and I think I've mentioned this in one of the webinars we did in 2020, we don't go by individual names of substances. We use the classification that they fall under. And from that classification, you'll be able to deduce the controls that need to be put in place. So is there a compliance requirement checklist really available with respect to hazardous substances in Chem Safety website? Yes, indeed, there is. You'll be able to use that particular threshold checklist that'll let you know if you need location compliance, emergency response plans, signage, fire extinguishers, secondary containment, secured if unattended, all that kind of stuff as well. But we'll reiterate a lot of these questions. You know, when we do our follow-up, we'll be able to sort of send through emails and follow up on these questions there as well. So really available with respect to hazardous substances. Yes, indeed. And just a quick heads up, when it comes to worker training, it just is, okay? It does. If you've got hazardous substances on site, all workers need the training. You know, you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to think, oh, but you know, if I've only just got this there, if it's non-DG, then you know, technically it doesn't. But if you have hazardous substances on site, regardless, even if you're just storing them, yes, you will need worker training for it. If you have class 6.1 A's and 6.1 B's, regardless, yes, you'll need certified handlers for them unless you fall under those particular categories that we mentioned previously. Okay, we've got another question popping up. Full class 1 explosive train. Good on you, Rob. Yes. Oh, Phil, sorry. Yeah, no, good on you, Phil. Yeah, most definitely. Rob's actually he's a good friend of ours here at Chem Safety. We get on quite well with Rob, and yes, indeed. I was trying not to name names, but yeah, no, that's really good. And like I said, however, you can if you want to be impartial, you can use the website here. And yes, indeed, when it comes to South Island, you'll need to check it out in South Island. But yeah, probably for class 1s, there's probably not too many either. You know, there's a Rob, there's a Dave, there's a few, but anyway. Yes, so can this training be done in-house? Now, that's the thing. So certified handler training, that might be a tricky one to do in-house. So that's generally needs to be done by a provider because you need to cover off all the things, and also you'll need to provide to the compliance certifier all the evidence of training. However, the worker training can be done in-house. However, it is just a matter of ensuring that you are covering all of those requirements that are set out in Regulation 4.5. So making sure you're covering all of the stuff off. You're covering all the stuff off, then it can be done in-house. Now, previously, I've had this discussion with many of our clients saying, listen, you know, you guys can do this in-house, and they'll say, listen, we'd rather have an external provider due to the fact that if we try and do it internally, a lot of people just drift off and they don't even pay attention because, you know, we're all workmates. If we have a professional external provider come on board, the information is absorbed a lot more easier and a lot more better than if we were to undertake it in-house. But a quick answer to that question, no, it can be undertaken in-house, but you need to ensure that you're covering all of these particular aspects of things. And not only just covering it off, but it needs to be documented that you've covered this off, and you need to prove how it was covered off and how the people actually learnt it all. Okay, so it can be done in-house, but you need evidence and proof of all of the stuff being managed and being undertaken at that time. So short answer, yes, it can be undertaken in-house, but yes, indeed, you need to make sure you're covering off all of these bits and pieces here. And it needs to be documented. So it just means that if you are audited, then you've got documentation that proves that you covered this off, that these people indeed engaged and understood exactly what you were talking about. Okay, so just looking there, I think we've slowed down a wee bit on the question front. We've had about 12 odd questions. Hopefully, me by naming names, I haven't I haven't got myself in trouble, but I don't think so. I think it was quite good there. That you know, there's a wee plug there for Rob. Yeah, no, he's all good as well. But yes, indeed. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll just quickly check. No, I think that is us. So again, once again, from myself, Dwayne Bennett, and from Chem Safety, thank you very much for attending our sort of worker training recap, and also the webinar. I think we kind of went into more detail around certified handlers, at least there. So thank you for coming. And if you do have any questions, any further questions later on down on the piece, yeah, get in touch with us here, flick us a wee email. And of course, there will be a follow-up email following this particular webinar. Don't forget to check us out if you've missed the webinar, or if you've just signed in right at the end when I'm answering questions, or if it was too long and you only saw the first 15 minutes. Again, just look us up on subscribe to our website, and also to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our website as well if you like, and you'll also be able to find these webinars on our website as well. So thank you very much for coming. Okay, thank you and goodbye.